have all, yes, recording has started, and I will now give this virtual floor to our first first speaker. It's János Fejes from Hungary, and the title of his presentation is which is the most popular of them, a review on Viking mythology's representation in heavy and extreme metal lyrics. Okay, so now you should be able to share your screen, and you are welcome. You have 20 minutes, and afterwards, let's see, maybe we will have all the questions at the end of all three presentations, so it will be easier. But you can, again, write your comments already in chat, so we can come back to it.
Great, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes, and I hope you also can see my presentation, right?
Yes, everything is good.
That is great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon for everybody. First of all, I wish to greet all the participants of this wonderful conference, and I would like to also thank for the organizers for creating this online event, as now for me this is the only way how I could participate here. I really hope also that the internet and my computer won't play any games with us, and I can share my results with you without any kind of problem. Let me introduce myself in a sentence or two. As you heard, my name is János Fejes. I am from Hungary. I'm a historian of religions and an aesthetician, currently working and teaching at Pázmány Péter Catholic University in Hungary at the Department of Political Sciences. My main research interest is the reception of ancient mythologies in metal lyrics. Today's topic is going to be Viking mythology. That may seem a quiet yet too research topic, but as only a handful of studies work with quantitative method, thus there are a host of opportunities still to grasp. Throughout my presentation, I wish to take the starting point, as we all know what is Viking mythology and what are the key and core stories and literary corpuses connected to this theme. Let me show you the structure of the presentation. After a brief introduction, I would like to present you the aims of current research, the method that was used, the material that was examined, the results, and last but not least, what we can understand from all of this. A key question could be, why is still there an importance of studying lyrics in metal music? First of all, we should take a look on reading and reception itself. Wolfgang Iser, a scholar of the phenomenology of reading, says that reading is an activity that recreates the text for the reader in the reader's mind. Thus, metal musicians read the myths and recreate them in their minds differently. Stanley Fish, another important scholar of literature, says that the way how we read and recreate is defined by our interpretive community. The interpretive community is defined by our social, political, religious, ethnographical, etc. status. Thus, reading lyrics give us the opportunity to get in touch with what the bands think of topics in an artistic way. Their writing of lyrics is the result of their reading. Thus, it is a quite important element in the full understanding the art itself that is called metal. You can see in a brief sentence what is the aim of current research. It is an attempt to unearth a deeper layer than the individual examination of lyrics. A focus on a bigger portion of data may give different insights than those of separated close readings. Now I wish to talk a moment or for a second or two about how did I work and what was the corpus that I worked with. My earlier research is always focused on close readings, and hence those surveys also gave many important data information about our current topic. They naturally stuck on a certain level of understanding. And keeping in mind that no research is able to give a 100% true perspective, besides some individual examples, our focus is going to use a database, and let us see what our corpus is made of for today. Last year, during the first pandemic quarantine period, I started to compile a registry and database of mythology-based lyrics. Today, it has more than 1,100 items in it, from which the Viking mythology-based section is going to be analyzed. I could compile 466 songs written by 57 bands. It is important to state that when a song is put into the database, it loses its context. For example, it does not matter if it is part of a concept album or is a sole Viking theme song of a band. All songs are individual items and are analyzed individually. The time span of this database ranges from 1983 to 2020, starting with Manowar's Gate of Valhalla. On the slide, you can see the geographical distribution of the songs enumerated. The biggest portion of the lyrics are in English, as it is the lingua franca of our age, making it the easiest to be accessed by listeners worldwide. The not English lyrics that are in the database are ones that have official English translations provided by the bands themselves. So you can see that only the Anglo-Saxon and Germanic and Nordic countries are listed amongst the countries. So this first research only focuses on these territories, not forgetting the European and worldwide impact of Viking mythology and metal music. And now Finland is also excluded from the database because we are going to have different speeches in connection with the Finnish metal scene today and tomorrow. So besides the geographical data, the other classification categories are important to be introduced. The first task during the compilation for me was to locate the mythological topic within a song, especially to find the main mythological topic. For example, if the protagonist of a song is Thor and it is in connection with some of his adventures where he is the main figure, then the topic of the song is Thor himself. But if the song is about Ragnarok and the episode of Thor's death is in the focus, then nevertheless we meet there with Thor again. The topic of the song is classified as Ragnarok. At the end of the day, I could compile almost 60 different topics in the 466 songs. The second classification category, the main theme, is more narrowing, and it is one of those base categories that we are going to work with today. You can see them on the slide. There are 11 of them. Afterlife, anti-Christianity, cosmology, creation, end of the world, myth of a god, mythological figure, pantheon, romantic nostalgia, saga literature, warfare, and wisdom. Last but not least, our main interest was that how the bands recreate the myths of Viking mythology. 6 categories were located in connection with methodology. There are some self-evident ones like the retelling category, and I will show you them now. The retelling category, where we find that lyrics simply retell or paraphrase a myth without changing its original plot. As you can see it in connection with the cited Amon Amar song, it clearly just simply retells or paraphrases some original stories. The second one is adaptation, which is another self-evident or easy category. These songs use either the prose or the poetic Eddic texts, either in original or in their English translations, and simply they recite, re-sing, try to give a new musical and not textual interpretation for those songs. And here we have the anti-Christian category as well, where we see that a Viking myth is used or rephrased to have a kind of an anti-Christian approach, like here in this case with Falkenbach's song, which shows us that Ragnarok is going to reach only the Christian ones, and it will make the Viking culture flourish again. These are the easy categories. Now let us see the more complicated ones. First of all, here we have the imaginary category. In case of an imaginary lyric, we see that Viking mythology is only the scenery for a song, like in the case of Bathory cited one on the slide. You can see that both Odin and Thor are the mythological element here, but the plot of the song is imaginary, giving the insight of an everyday Viking seafarer's or warrior's mind. So we have no real mythological connection, only some kind of a background put in with a Viking scenery. Here is the extension category. It differs only a bit from the imaginary. In case of an extension song, we see that in a myth story, new elements are added that are originally not part of the original myth. For example, in connection with the Song of Tyr here, we meet the thoughts of the Einherjar soldiers during their march to Ragnarok. You see that the original mythical story is a bit extended in this regard. Last but not least, here is the actualizing category. In the cited Song of Enslaved, we see that the wisdom of Odin is the main mythological theme, but it is given in an actual meaning, as the wisdom of Odin can be reached by an individual in our age as well. So a myth is not a dusty old story, but something that is living with us today. After this rather long introduction, let me show you the results. Let us see what the numbers do say. And I would like to highlight a warning because there are coming a host of graphs and numbers, but I will try to explain them to you as entertaining as I am able to. According to my accounts, here you can see the chart depicting the methodological distribution of the corpus. Later, we are going to discuss some regional differences as well, but let me see now only the whole picture. The main interest in Viking mythological lyrics is retelling, while the second in line is imaginary, using Viking mythology in almost 1/4 of the songs to be a mere scenery for other topics. Direct adaptations and anti-Christian interests are somewhat on the margin. The next slide, you can see what the most important topics are in their wider sense. On the podium, we have myth of a god, afterlife, and end of the world as well. Closing on these topics regarding the end of the world or Ragnarok, we see that retelling is here once again the main focus. The anti-Christian usage of Ragnarok is always in connection with the biblical apocalypse, showing its negative image as during Ragnarok all Christians die by the hand of the Viking forces. We see more than a handful of actualizing songs, in many cases dealing with the parallelization of Ragnarok and today's problems within society, using it as a mere metaphor. The afterlife is a natural interest for metal bands too. In the Viking context, the biggest part of the songs somehow deal with Valhalla, with its pleasures for man or the way how one may enter it. Naturally, there are topics that are closely related to Valhalla, for example, the Einherjar or the Valkyries. These lately mentioned topics are in their separate manner, are always have more focus on them than on Valhalla itself. And you may remember from the myths that half of the dead heroes are taken to Folkrang by Freya, but here you see that only 1% of the songs deal with this question. In reality, this 1% is only one song. It is called Path to Vanir by Enslave. So this stresses us some commonplaces in connection with Viking mythology used in metal, like it is a hyper-masculine word. So for a hero to go to a goddess's heaven is not that appealing as Valhalla could be. We see quite similar results in connection with the myth of a god category too. Odin, as the king of the gods, is the king of this category as well. We see that Thor is the second with 21%, while Loki and Baldur share the third place with 13% together. One may assume that as Loki is a kind of a chief rebel angel in Viking mythology, thus his figure would be better represented in the lyrics, but he is not. Nota bene that Baldur himself is always cited in connection with his death and not because he is the god of light. If we take a closer look on Odin and his representation, we may find some interesting points as well. For example, that his original myths are almost equally represented as using him as part of the scenery. The warfare category, in his case, lists songs where scenes of battles are depicted with battle cries to Odin, so with not direct connection to any of his myths. The same is the case with the romantic nostalgia category, whereas he is called to return with his Viking Age morality. Most of the wisdom lyrics are paraphrases of the Havamal as well, so they, in many cases, match with the adaptation category. In case of Thor, we see more based on myth songs, some nostalgic revival ones, and way less warfare-based imaginary songs too. So we may say that Thor's myths are more interesting for metal musicians than those of Odin's. Before the last rush of information, let us embrace a moment of break with a beautiful seashore that unfortunately ended now. So let us take some regional difference as well into account. Two main branches are to be compared. I divided them to two categories. We have the Nordic countries, listing Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the Faroe Islands, and Iceland together, and all the others, because I assume that there should be some major differences in the originating place of Viking mythology and in the other part of the corpus. In connection with the method, we see that the most important type is retelling and imaginary in both cases. Adaptation and actualization has a deeper impact in the Nordic area, maybe because of their better founded knowledge of the topic. On the level of mythological topics in both regions, the first three are the same, while an interesting segment can be that warfare-based lyrics are more frequent outside the Nordic region. So in the other countries, we see that general allusions in scenery building is a more widespread phenomenon. So to answer the opening question and the title of the presentation, which is the most popular of them all? The most popular myth is Ragnarok, the end of the world. We should not never forget the original lyrical distinction of Dina Weinstein, where we see that the chaotic lyric type is in many cases in connection with the spiritual and earthly struggles, death and end of the world. So Ragnarok has everything that is interesting for a chaotic lyric. There is warfare, there is epic scenery, and there is the end of the world in it. Afterlife, the second most popular category, is once again a natural interest based on this. It almost needs no explanation. The myth of a god category could be taken out of this Weinstein context. We see here a kind of an archetypical feature of humanity, whereas we have the need to tell stories, and this kind of category is satisfying this primordial need. What do we see in connection with the methods? The retailers work as the modern scouts, using their instruments and voice to entertain their audience with ancient stories. Many of the imaginary songs are using Viking mythological allusions just because the role model bands use them as well. This is a phenomenon first perceived by sociologists earlier, and it is called as secondary symbolism. In these cases, we see that not the symbol itself is interesting, not the Viking mythological topics are interesting, but as the role model bands use Viking mythology, and the bands who try to be authentic in this regard copy their role models, so they use Viking mythological allusions just to sound authentic, and we must never forget how important authenticity is within metal music. The extending and actualizing categories show us the stress points of other sections of the interpretive community known as metal culture. In connection with the who is the most popular, I think I almost said everything before, but let me enumerate once again the information. Odin is depicted here as a father, a warrior, and a wizard, both in the mythology and in the lyrics as well. So he is quite a complex figure and also the king of the gods. So he must be quite important for lyrics. Thor is the figure of the typical northern hero, a hyper-masculine kind of warrior, kind of a role model once again for the metal code. If you remember the findings of Imke von Helden of the connecting topic, you may see that her argument is quite greatly supported here. Loki and Baldur are almost the same level of representations, mainly connected to Ragnarok in both cases, and we have plenty of literature about how important this is for metal music. I mean, Ragnarok and the end of the world. Last but not least, let me have some remarks in connection with the limitations and the further research directions of my survey. First of all, the most important thing could be to have some comparative studies based on my database, either placing different mythologies close to each other, like Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and things like that. Or another comparative approach could take off from the ground of Viking mythology, as Viking mythology may be the most well represented one in metal lyrics. So the comparative studies could be compared in connection with Viking mythology. What are the differences in regional things as well? And naturally, the widening of this universe should be important too, to make the database more broad and more rich. And of course, other verbal elements could be taken into account as well. For example, band names and album titles in connection with the analysis. Now, I would like to thank you for your kind attention. If you're interested in my research at a deeper level, please visit my blog. That's address you can find on the slide. And also you have my email address here. And if you have any questions, please ask away and I will attempt to answer you all as I understood after the two other presentations. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much. I think